Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is Monday, January 9th, 2023 at 7:02 p.m. The meeting is called to order. Would all please rise for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We all have all received a copy of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the packet to the agenda as distributed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes are printed on pages 5 through 9 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Next up on our agenda is time for visitor comments. Any member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any agenda item can do so at this time. Seeing no one, we have time as well for general visitor comments. Is there anybody who'd like to address the council on any matter whatsoever? Hearing none, we will move on to approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins on page 10 of the packet and concludes with a resolution printed on pages 43 through 46. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? Brad?
Well, I was going to ask Pete, but I'll ask Sally. Sally, maybe you can explain to people, why are we buying 500 water meters? It's basically, it says replace old meters, but the AMI meters are better than our current meters, correct?
Correct, and it saves time, and it's, you don't have to wait 30 days if you have something running. We can tell usually within 24 hours because we download the reads every day, so we can call residents and say there's something running, you're using a large amount of water
Okay.
compared to previous, so.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Carrie?
Do we want to note at this point about the revision to Housing and Redevelopment Authority, Jerry Hardy's appointment, correcting the term from 2022 to 2024?
Yes, that will be a correction to the consent agenda. Thank you. Any other questions? So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as corrected?
Motion to approve with the consent agenda as corrected.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. The consent agenda includes the following, the following budgeted purchases in excess of $25,000. I will read the vendors, but not all of the prices. They are printed in the packet. Minnesota Paving Materials, Graymont, Polydyne Inc., PBS Chemicals, Univar Solutions, PWT Chemicals, and Metering and Technology Solutions. The St. Peter Herald is officially designated as the official newspaper for the City of St. Peter during the year 2023. The following institutions are designated as the official depositories of the City of St. Peter with limits for deposit established at the levels indicated within the packet. Those institutions are First National Bank, Pioneer Bank, Citizens Community Bank, and Hometown Bank. Councilmember Brad DeVos shall serve as Mayor Pro Tem in the absence of Mayor Noel for the period January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. The following city official appointments are hereby approved for the calendar year 2023. City Attorney James W. Brandt and Assistant City Attorney Stephen D. Winkler. Finance Director Sally Vogel and Accountant Brenda Isley are authorized to initiate and receive automated clearinghouse and electronic fund transactions on behalf of the City of St. Peter. The following rules and procedures shall govern the operation of the City of St. Peter's City Council. Those are printed on pages 44 through 46 of the packet, if anybody'd like to read them in detail. The following advisory board appointment is approved as corrected. That is Jerry Hardy for 2020 through 2024. He's filling a partial term on the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. The following license applications are approved, subject to payment of licensing fees in compliance with city code. That's a tobacco license to Family Dollar and a solid waste handler to Hanson Sanitation. And the schedule of disbursements for December 8th, 2022 through December 22nd, 2022, and November 23rd, 2022 through January 4th, 2023 are hereby approved. We have a motion and a second, so would you call the roll, please, Barb?
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherster.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. We have no items of unfinished business tonight, so we will move on to new business. The first item is adoption of a resolution approving execution of library services contract with Nicollet County. That begins with the memo on page 47 of the packet.
Mayor, members, the information is provided in your packet. This is something we do typically around this time of year. Sometimes it's December, sometimes it gets into later January. This is an agreement with Nicollet County for them to provide funding to you for library services. This agreement is substantially similar as to what we've seen over the past 20 years or so, with really one major exception this year, in that the county is providing an additional $5,000 in funding overall for your operations. And so, as you'll see within the body of the document, the provision of resources has changed from approximately $50,000 to $55,000. You don't have to enter into this agreement, but if you don't, you won't get that money. And we rely on these resources to help cover expenses within the St. Peter Public Library. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, this is substantially similar to what you've seen over the past 2 decades or so.
Questions for Todd? Carrie?
I guess just a comment, I was pleased to see that there was an increase. I know that it doesn't meet the inflationary costs and how it's been stagnant, the amount we've received since 2019. Costs have increased. But I was pleased to see that there was an increase after so many years of it being stagnant. I think we can continue to work with the county to help them understand the value to the residents of Nicollet County, especially as library services become more digitized and you know, some of that's hard for us to track record keeping on what the reach is. But I think we can continue to articulate the value and hopefully request additional increases more on a consistent level to meet the costs.
Thank you. Emily?
Just to kind of piggyback on what Carrie said, as I serve on the library board, I get to hear at every meeting just the programming and the work that goes into the level of, you know, expertise at our library. They just do so much for so many different age groups and so many different kinds of residents of St. Peter. It's such an asset. And beyond the community of St. Peter, I know they've done surveys that have reached even further than that, and we got some response from people outside of our community and, you know, into the county. And so those county dollars are really, really important for the continued success and high level that the St. Peter Library achieves.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing nothing further, the resolution before us is on page 52 of the packet. Resolution calls for authorizing execution of the library services contract. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherster.
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
The resolution is approved. Moving on to adoption of a resolution approving execution of the Nicollet County Fair Board Agreement.
Members, this is in your packet starting on page 53, and this is really an initial attempt to ensure that we are clearly delineating the exchange of services that we've undertaken with the Fair Board, not Nicollet County, but the Horticulture Society, the Nicollet County Horticulture Society, for the last number of years. So we've done this for a number of years, but this is, again, really our attempt to make sure that it's written down someplace so everybody understands what the what the institutional history is here relative to the exchange of services. I think it's important to note that we don't do all of these things for free and that there is a standard fee that they provide, but there are certain things within the body of this that they're paying extra for to ensure that there's balance and not only the city helping provide services for something that's an important draw and fixture within our community, but also making sure that the resources that they generate cover those costs and that not just the St. Peter local city taxpayers are paying for those services that are provided. We think this does this pretty well. It might evolve over the next few years, but as I said, we've been providing for this exchange of services for a number of years, and we really see it moving forward into the future as well. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks might have, and the resolution is included on page 57 and 58 of your packet.
Any questions for Todd? Well, hearing none, the resolution before us on pages 57 and 58 of the packet calls for authorizing execution of a city cooperative assistance agreement with the Nicollet County Fair Board. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving on to adoption of a resolution approving an updated personnel policy. That begins with a memo on page 59 of the packet.
Mayor, members, this is something that you've reviewed twice, and even since the last time you've taken a look at it, Barb has done some cleaning up of the table of contents, and we had a few English items that we fixed to make sure that the grammar was more appropriate. But I would mention that in addition to the memo doing a good job of articulating the where and the why, our goal overall has been to not make any, what I would call substantive personnel policy changes. The goal was to make sure that we are compliant with the rules, both at the state and federal level, and to ensure that, again, having a second set of eyes, an attorney from Gallagher who does some HR consulting work with you, review this so that it really says what we intend it to say, so the language matches our intent. And so, as I mentioned previously, while there have been some changes over the last decade or so, there hasn't been a major review of this document for quite a long time, and so we thought it was appropriate to move forward. And again, all of you have had the chance to look at this on a couple of separate occasions and ask questions, so I think it meets the needs of the city and the wants of the council. Be happy to stand for any questions that you might have relative to the personnel policy, changes that were made, anything that you might have in there. Happy to do our best to try and answer that as best as we can. Again, the information is included in your packet, and I think the resolution is on page
112.
112. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Todd? Carrie?
My only thought is, rather than waiting another decade to make a change, instituting every 3 to 5 years a legal review of the handbook, even if there aren't major personnel policy changes, just having it looked at more frequently.
I would agree with that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, the resolution before us on page 112 of the packet calls for adopting the updated personnel policy manual. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. The resolution is approved. Moving on to adoption of a resolution approving updated job description for mechanic position.
Madam Mayor, this information is included in your packet, and Joel Schmidt, your maintenance superintendent, is here if you have any specific questions about the role that this position plays within the overall structure of the Public Works Department and really what they do. But as you know, it's our practice to review job descriptions when positions of this type come open, and so we've done that review, and you've had the chance to look at this at a workshop. I wouldn't say there are significant changes in here, but there are some important changes that I think are of note. And so our goal certainly is to make sure that we have an appropriate description within the marketplace, in a more challenging marketplace than we had last time that this was open. I think also it's important to note that we provided some of the things that you've adopted over the last couple of years as regular modifications to job description. So example, one of the items underneath desired qualifications includes being able to speak conversational Somali and Spanish, or Spanish and Somali, I think is how we have it worded within the value application. I think this matches very clearly where we want to be in relation to having a mechanic on site, which we've had for a number of years, and provide the supervision that's necessary for an mechanic assistance, which you put in place on a part-time basis not that long ago. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions as best I can, or Joel's here if you have any practical questions related to how this all fits together. Pete and Joel and the team have been the major architects of any modifications that have been included in this draft. The information, again, is included in your packet with the resolution on page 118 providing for approval.
Thanks. Any questions for Todd or Joel? Hearing none, the resolution adopting updated mechanic position description is on page 118 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ruthven?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next resolution calls for approving an updated job description for a mechanic assistant position. And that memo is on page 119 of the packet.
Yes, Mayor and members, this is for the mechanic assistant position. As you know, you put this into place, well, a year ago or so, give or take a little bit. In the past, we've had temporary folks come and help maybe during the summer months or certain other times. Our goal here has been to have something on a part-time basis, somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 hours per week, and so we feel that it's appropriate at that level that a job description should be in place. As you may know, we had a job description previously, and we went through a recruitment process, and part of the reason we're coming back to you is because, frankly, we have reduced or lowered the minimum qualifications to be qualified for this position. We still think it works within the organizational structure that's necessary, so we're not worried about it from that standpoint, but really one of the reasons we're doing that is because the number of applicants that fit that criteria, that are willing to work on a part-time basis, that have the skill set necessary, the previous criteria was, I think, demonstrably low and difficult to find. That was demonstrated by the number of applications that we really didn't get as a part of this process. So we're coming back to you with the modifications that you see in place, again, mainly as a part of the minimum qualifications. Be happy to answer any questions, or again, Joel is here if you have any specific questions about how this works within the organizational structure, or practically works with what does this person repair, how did they do it, where do they do it at, those types of things.
Any questions for Todd or Joel? Emily?
Todd, is this the one of the positions that helps with like our MRVT buses and the maintenance of those?
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, we would certainly see this depending on the day, because things change, but doing repairs, changing tires, oil changes, those types of things that require lots of time, energy, and effort, not just with MRVT, but all the equipment that we have, repairing small engines, doing those types of things. Some of the more complicated work would certainly be done by the mechanic, but this is a great opportunity to get a lot of that work done, and I think we've demonstrated really clear in the past that this is a very cost-effective way to get a lot of that work done for us. We have the facilities and the equipment to make this go, and so we think it's important from a cost perspective to try and continue to move in this direction.
Thanks. Any further questions? Carrie?
It's just a comment. I think it's interesting to have to try to hire for a supervisor and then a direct report at the same time, but there's a maintenance superintendent that oversees them and can provide the support and make sure it's a smooth training process, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a lot of struggles with this, and although we do list for the mechanic supervising this, we really more see that as saying, you're going to take care of the tires on this bus. We've got these 3 cars lined up. Here's who to call to get them in to get the oil changed and those types of things. And that's really where we see that happening. And so really foreman and maintenance superintendent direct the overall work within this category and make decisions relative to priorities on what gets fixed first if we get into a bind. Let's say we're in a blizzard and we have 3 plow trucks break, right? What gets fixed first? And so someone else really makes those types of decisions.
Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, the resolution on page 124 of the packet calls for adopting the updated mechanic assistant position description. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to adoption of resolutions approving execution of memorandums of understanding with all 5 bargaining units. There are 5 resolutions under this agenda item.
Madam Mayor and members, this is something that you discussed previously towards the end of your budget process and that we've talked about previously relative to compensation related to union groups and certainly action that you took related to non-unionized and non-contract groups at the end or your last meeting, your last regular council meeting in December. What we've done here is provided the rationale for that really under 2 bullet points, and it's our suggestion that multiple resolutions, a resolution for each bargaining unit be approved separately, so we have a separate paper trail for that. We've articulated, I think, previously and included in this memo the cost to this. This is a recommendation from my office in trying to ensure that we're covering the basics relative to marketplace within these types of positions, all the positions that you have within the city of St. Peter. This is slightly outside of the original plan related to the budget for 2023, which was done in 2022. But we do believe that you have the revenue to ensure that this is viable and reasonable alternative and really what's appropriate in the circumstance related to the job market and where we are in many of the positions. I'd be happy to answer questions about that, or if you have separate questions about one of the resolutions, you'll note that they're almost identical, save the change in the name of the bargaining unit. And again, but I'd be happy to answer questions in whatever category you'd like. So, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, rather than asking for, if there are questions between every resolution, let's ask questions now about all of the resolutions, and then we can kind of just take them in order if that works for everybody. Any questions for Tyler? We've had multiple conversations about this, and so this isn't new to any of us, but
The only other thing I'd mention from an historical standpoint, and one of the reasons that my office has recommended this, relates to, well, frankly, none of you were here at that time. But there was a time, about 10 or 12 years ago, when the city had substantial local government aid cuts and what was called unallocation of local government aid. And at that point, we lost, forgive me for not remembering the exact number, but somewhere in excess of $600,000 in local government aid, which is a substantial blow to your general fund budget. A substantial blow to your general fund budget. At that time, the council had entered into a series of 3-year contracts and a couple of 2-year contracts with these bargaining units. And we went to the bargaining units and asked them to take it 0 because of those cuts, and they did. They had been promised something more than that, and they came back and took it 0. As you know, we've worked very diligently with these groups and non-unionized groups to try and keep the playing field relatively level and to move as appropriate. And again, I think this is appropriate related to where the job marketplace is and pay within the marketplaces, whether it's police officers or groundskeepers within the parks group, dispatchers or electric linemen. I think it's important that we try and keep pace in that area. We want to attract people that do good work for you and for your citizens, and so this is one of the ways that we do that.
Brad?
I'd like to note that this isn't, for people who are wondering, this isn't something that's unique to St. Peter. My wife works for another government agency, and they also reopened up their contract to do an increase for next year as well. So it isn't just St. Peter going out here and doing this. Other government agencies are doing it as well. So
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Well, hearing none, we're going to jump into approving these 5 resolutions. The first resolution is on page 133, the resolution for approving a memorandum of agreement between the City of St. Peter and International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 70 AFL-CIO Parks for calendar year 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ramp. Aye. Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. The next resolution calls for approving a memorandum of agreement by and between the City of St. Peter and International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 70 AFL-CIO Streets for calendar year 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember Wham.
The resolution is approved. The next resolution calls for approving a memorandum of agreement by and between the City of St. Peter and International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 70 AFL-CIO Utilities for calendar year 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember Wham. Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. The next resolution calls for approving a memorandum of agreement by and between the City of St. Peter and Law Enforcement Labor Services Local Number 241 Police Officers for calendar year 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember Wham. Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. The resolution is approved. The last resolution under this agenda item calls for approving a memorandum of agreement by and between the City of St. Peter and Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 242 Communication Technicians for calendar year 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra.
Aye.
Councilmember Wham. Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
You've earned a special award for that.
Moving along to adoption of a resolution approving a request for city assistance for the Special Olympics Polar Bear Plunge event. That memo begins on page 136 of the packet.
Mayor and members, this is something that you've seen on a regular basis for a number of years. So this is for the Polar Bear Plunge, which the mayor kind of hosts, but frankly, the City of St. Peter does a lot of work related to this, so I think you could be considered hosts of this as well. This is really for the area around Hallett's Pond. You might think, because of changes in ownership and property, that the nature of this agreement or this resolution would have changed, but it doesn't. It still can be held in the same location. Access would be provided by a different private property owner. But as it relates to the city, the type of work or support that we're providing is not planned to change from previous years. We think that this costs anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per year by the time we help do some things and pick up some things. I have made note of some of the concerns that were mentioned previously by budding property owners related to erosion in that area. And so there has been a discussion with the sheriff's office related to that, and I think everybody understands the impact, and there'll be a little bit more control on volunteers who are assisting when that happened last year. This relates to warm water being discharged across the ground and into Hallett's Pond. So that's the type of erosion we're really talking about. So I think we're in good shape here. The sheriff has made the request, and you'll see his request on page 137. Providing approval of the request is what is left for you to do if you're willing, and that resolution's on page 138.
Questions for Todd about the resolution? Dustin?
I'd just like to further clarify, the issue that we ran into last year was the discharging of the hot water from their hot tub that came right down and eroded Hallett's and the neighboring property. I know we spoke last year, I spoke with Pete. I know Lake Hallett Association was involved. Just as long as we make sure we don't have a repeat of last year.
We have made everyone aware that we can make aware, and that's what we can do in this situation. We do have to rely on the sheriff a little bit to ensure that that gets followed up on and volunteers that he and his organizing committee put in place. But I think everyone who needs to be aware is aware, understands what to do and what not to do, and the whys and wherefores of that. And I think that's the appropriate role for us to be in this situation.
Okay, perfect.
Any additional questions? All right, hearing none, the resolution on page 138 calls for authorizing use of Hallett's Pond for 2023 Polar Bear Plunge. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our final action item of the night, adoption of a resolution approving execution of a contract modification with the city administrator.
It's me. Mayor and members of the council, this is an annual thing that we do. We're obligated under Todd's contract to review them once a year, and that's what we've done. In this time, comparing the memos to last year's, it's a little different. We switched our process. We went to a more of an oral process, rather than a numbered process. So you don't see the numbers that you saw last year. Also, this year, rather than include just the council, we also went to Todd's people he had direct supervision of and asked for their opinion. Based on all that, the council came to the conclusion that it would be appropriate for Todd to get the same raise as was given to the non-union members. They felt that they were in line this year with other city administrators in the country, in the state. We did a review, a salary review, and looking at his accomplishments over the past year, the council felt that it was appropriate. I've talked to Todd. He is willing to accept that, so it'd be my recommendation that we approve the contract that is provided in the packet.
Any questions or comments? I would say thank you for your work on the new process, which I think is different than we've done in the past, but I feel really good about the new process, and so thanks for all the work that you helped implementing that this year.
Amy really gets the credit.
Well, thanks to Amy. Hearing no further questions or comments, the resolution we are considering is on page 147 of the packet, a resolution modifying the city administrator's employment contract. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ramp?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to reports. I think everybody's heard me talk enough tonight, so I will hold any reports and pass it on to any council members. Is there any member of the council who'd like to report on anything tonight? Carrie?
May I? Just wanted to remind council members that Legislative Action Day is coming up on January 25th, and our appointments with our legislators are scheduled. So I hope that we have another opportunity to discuss legislative priorities together, so we can be equipped before we head up there. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Anybody else? Hearing nothing further, we'll move on to reports from the city administrator.
So Madam Mayor, if I can follow up on that, we do have an agenda item scheduled for your workshop.
Great.
And so we'll be providing some information very similar to what you've seen in past years. We have invited your local state elected officials, Representative Brand and Senator Friends, to come and visit with you at a workshop. I don't know whether that will be before or after that point, but certainly we'll try and arrange that and provide some additional opportunities for them to come and be with you. So just to follow up on that. I also want to mention, as a part of my report, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's a holiday closure for non-emergency offices next Monday. So just to remind you that your workshop will not be on Monday, it will be on Tuesday. And so watch for that packet to come out on Friday, and we'll mention that. Same location as usual, but different time, 5:30, but different day. So please watch for that. In addition, I want to mention some board and commission openings. So you have one opening on the Civil Service Commission. You have an opening on the EDA. You have an opening on Parks and Recreation Board, and then also one left on Tourism. So if you know someone that might be interested, please feel free to direct them to the city webpage where there's a form that they can fill out and send back in. Or if they want to know a little bit more, please feel free to contact Barbara and we'll be happy to share some information. If you bump into somebody kind of after hours and you're not sure but they might be interested, please send their name our way. We'll be happy to send them a little bit of information via mail or email or however you want us to do that about what's entailed in being a volunteer on those very important boards. These are boards that really provide great advice to the city council about lots of actions, including what kind of park improvements are made, including who might get a loan from the Economic Development Authority, what programs might be in place for handicap accessibility grants that we do through the Economic Development Authority. Tourism has the ability to spend some resources for tourism activities, and so that's very important and growing in importance with the number of grant applications and funding and resources that that group gets. So we certainly want to encourage folks. It's a wonderful way to kind of get your feet wet and participate in democracy and your community really at the grassroots and where things happen. So that's kind of my pitch for that one, Madam Mayor. And then also thanks for the extension on contract. You've really done a wonderful job in helping ensure that we can hire great people here. You've helped make sure that there are wonderful folks within all the teams, whether it's the police department or public works, recreation, library, you name it. And so I really appreciate that, and it continues to be an honor to serve you and the citizens in St. Peter, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, unless there's anything further, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.